I think it's probably time that we launch into
Yes, let's
you
do
and
it.
I, PowrDragn.
Yep.
The cards that we are looking forward to rotating the most
Mm-hmm.
is how I think we want to start this out.
Yeah. So I think we can both do like our honorable mention, which would be like our number 6.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then we'll go off our list the rest of the way, I think.
Cool, cool. All right. Well, you go ahead. You're the guest around here. You go ahead. Go first. What's your honorable mention?
Well, honestly, this is one that I think everybody has dealt with at some point in time, and also leads to some long, slow, grindy games. But Elspeth Conquers Death. I mean,
Oh, okay.
it's a damn good Magic card. So
It's
I mean,
ridiculously
I
good.
don't, and I played with it a lot myself, but all the decks it goes into tend to be slower. It kind of invalidates your bigger plays, which kind of sucks, especially if you're playing like a creature deck or something and your 4 or 5 mana thing gets eaten up. Like, it exiles it, which is also bad because you don't get any benefit from it when it dies. Like, the card's just great. And it can get planeswalkers back.
Yep.
Which is super annoying. So
ridiculous, dude.
Yeah, I have no qualms about Elspeth Conquers Death going away. I'm glad we don't have to see that anymore.
And you're right. The card is just so good on like so many different axes. You don't get the dies trigger off your guy because it exiles. I believe it is it not exile target non-land permanent?
Yeah. Here's the other annoying thing
unbelievable.
About it also shapes the board because, well, one, it also has the tax on a spell for a turn. But
that's so much better than people thought it was going to be, too.
You actually get caught like, well, I don't want to kill the planeswalker yet, so I have to give them another turn of value because if I kill it, they're just going to get it back. So it's like,
yep,
it has that level going for it too, which is super annoying.
So annoying. There's been so many times where I've been in exactly that situation where it's like, well, I could kill this planeswalker, but there's just no reason to do. They get refreshed loyalty on their planeswalker if I kill it now. You finally deal with their problem planeswalker, and then they drop ECD. And you're like, well, I have to kill them in 2 turns, or they just get, the Kaya back or whatever. And it is just a supremely annoying card. Just a really good card on a lot of different levels. And that's, I can totally see that being why the sort of catch-all removal that blows up whatever you're trying to do and keeps you from casting your ultimatums and your epiphanies and all that stuff. Like, it's just so brutal on so many levels. So ECD is a good pick.
What was your honorable mention?
Cultivate.
Ooh, that's what I think probably surprises people.
Yeah, the thing is, Cultivate's a good card. It's just a lot like ECD. It's just a good magic card. It's just so good, right? Like on turn 3, the play pattern I'm sick of is like turn 3 Cultivate, turn 4 Cultivate, turn 5 win the game.
That's fair. Yeah.
Just with Ugin or Emergent Ultimatum. We're going into a format now where it's really difficult to play 3 colors beyond any like treasure shenanigans or anything. And I think Cultivate would make it really easy for green decks to get, better mana than they ought to have access to.
Okay.
Right. In this upcoming format. It's so easy to cast. It's only 3 mana. It sets you up like you go from 3 to 5, like guaranteed. It hits landfall, right? Because like not only do you get the land that turn, but you get the land next turn that you got in your hand. So it's just, there's so many ways to make Cultivate, like not only
that's
busted,
a good point
but
that you
a
bring
great
up too.
fixer.
Because going from 2 to 4 is nice, but going from 3 to 5 is really good.
Busted.
Yeah.
Like really nasty, good. Dude. It usually, if it doesn't allow you to cast one big like 5-drop, it usually allows you to either double spell, or it allows the teamer player to cast like a 2-drop and hold up Saw It Coming or negate. And like, these are just unbelievable play patterns. Like being able to go from 3 to 5 to cast Goldspan on your turn 4 is good.
I was just about to say, Cultivate into Goldspan into mana up for something.
Yep. It's just not having Cultivate like really affects ramp to where like, I think that it'll create a sort of even playing field in terms of ramp between the green decks and like the treasure based decks that are black based. And I kind of like that.
Yeah. Right? I think that's fine for balance purposes.
But yeah, Cultivate.
All right.
So
then I'm going to give them my number 5.
And
this is one I don't think anybody will argue with. Like, I think this is going to be, if we ask the viewers to make their own top 5, this probably makes 90% of the top 5 list. But Bone Crusher Giant.
Yeah, we knew it was going to show up on one of our lists, right?
I mean, if nothing else, I'm just, and not even talking about power level, not talking about how it affects the format or whatever. I'm just cool seeing it go because it was in every single list. Like if you splashed red, you were playing Bone Crusher Giant, right? Just
if
the
your
value
deck can
of getting
create red mana.
Yeah, getting a removal spell and getting a sizable creature at that. It's a 4/3 that has an upside even. Like if they targeted its bonus damage.
Right.
Like, there was nothing bad about this card. Hell, there was a lot of times you didn't even care about using the stomp. You just played the giant.
You just play the giant, right? Because like it's a fine body, like it's on curve, it's above curve.
The card was spectacular, and honestly, the card still shows up even in historic lists.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I see it in historic every now and
really,
again.
really good. So yeah, this is one just from the ubiquity of it all that I'm good to just see it go away.
But my next card, my number 5, actually kind of dovetails from that. And that is Brazen Borrower.
Yep, equally as problematic.
Just as bad, man. Like, here's my okay, with Bone Crusher Giant, what often happens, like the play pattern with Crusher is that, like, let's say opponent's on the play, okay? They play Mountain. It doesn't really matter. Just red source and something else their first 2 turns, and they hold up. You play, I don't know, Luminarch Aspirant, just as an example. Your opponent Bone Crushers your Luminarch Aspirant end of turn, and then goes and they play Bone Crusher Giant. And that is a massive tempo swing that is really difficult to get over. And that's like the most frustrating thing about Bone Crusher to me is those early tempo swings. Brazen Borrower takes away like your win condition late in the game. You know, like Brazen Borrower either creates a little bit of tempo in the early game sometimes. Sometimes it messes up one of your blocks by taking away one of your creatures. Like it can do those things if you wanted to. But very often what Borrower does to me is I like get set up with the proper board state, and then they like borrow my premier enchantment back to my hand, or like the thing I really needed to go off. When I try to cast it again, they counter it, they negate it or whatever. I hit a lot of late game board states that Brazen Borrower just completely demolishes. And I hate it. And then they get a 3/1 flyer.
That's a good point. I mean, that did happen where like you would kind of have to plan your attacks around, okay, how much do I believe they have a Brazen Borrower?
It happens all the time,
right? Like if I attack, do I have to leave 1 defender back or 2? Because if I leave 1 and they bounce it, I'm dead. So I guess I can only attack with this one like 3/3 and leave something else back. You know, like I have seen those situations. So you're not wrong.
Brazen Borrower ends games almost no matter what point.
We should just label our number 5 as adventure creatures.
Adventure stuff.
Like just adventures as a whole.
It's like I can't tell you how many times like opponent has like Alrund's Epiphany and gotten the birds. Like what they'll do is EOT Brazen Borrower or something and then play the Brazen Borrower as a creature. Like they'll Brazen Borrower away a blocker, play the Brazen Borrower EOT as a creature, and then go in like Alrund's Epiphany. And now they can swing for like 5 the next turn, flying. Yeah. And it's just, there's so many ridiculous play patterns with Borrower, dude. But yeah, adventure.
Just adventure stuff as a whole.
In general, dude. Edgewall Innkeeper, Lovestruck
Murderous Beast. Rider. Like I'm good. I mean, and don't be wrong, I played with all those.
Same.
But I am totally fine with them going away. I had somebody like I feel like this was like 7 months ago or so, actually comment on my YouTube channel that, well, I don't know what you're talking about because adventure cards aren't that good and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, who, like, and I actually thought the dude was just trolling.
Yeah,
like,
is it possible to have that opinion? Is it possible?
Apparently so. That's how unbelievable it was that I honestly thought the dude was just trolling.
Jesus. Adventure creatures are like the typical kind of standard value that you're looking for on easy mode.
Yeah.
And God, I hate it. Anyway, what is your next card, my friend?
Man, okay. This is okay. The other video we have where people are gonna like just want to vilify me for some of my decisions. I think I'm redeeming myself with this list.
Okay, you probably.
Because this next one I think is one that everybody's been terrorized by for the last. God, it's been real heavy for the last probably 4 or 5 months.
I bet I know what it is.
Winoda, Joiner of Forces.
Oh, I missed. I thought it was something else. Okay.
My goodness, this card. First off, 4 mana is not that hard to get. Like to
no,
be
it's
able
really
to play
not.
the Winoda, and it's a sizable body on top of it. And you can like there were so many good supporting cards, especially when we had like Selfless Savior and all these other things, like just so many quality cards you could play to trigger this. It wasn't even hard to use.
It's like Clarion Spirit is not a human and creates non-humans.
Yeah.
It's the dog itself is not a human, selfless savior.
Bonecrusher Giant also showed up in that list.
Yep. Every now and again, you'd see the nihilists with, Lovestruck Beast. Recently, we've been seeing more nihilists because you can play Prosperous Innkeeper, not a human, by the way, which lets you get your turn 3 Winoda and swing because it's a ramp guy that doesn't tap to ramp.
There's just so many ways to use it. So many ways.
Jaspera Sentinel helps you get it early too. Sometimes, it
basically was ending games on turn 3 or turn 4. Like the game wasn't over, but like you've already either done so much damage. It's
effectively over.
Yeah, or you've demolished your opponent's board so much that unless they literally have exactly a sweeper on the next turn, and even then, that's assuming the selfless savior or the the other one you could sacrifice, give something protection if it was a damage spell. Man, it's just like, even when I played it, I didn't like, I've played videos with Winoda and I just got done and went like, okay, it did powerful things, but I didn't even feel like I did anything. The only decision was, do I believe the opponent has a way to deal with my Winoda or not, and can I defend against it? That's literally it. Like,
does my opponent have the Heartless Act?
Yeah. And your best defense was to literally try to kill everything around Winoda. Like that was your best play, and then just hopefully deal with it by itself.
And like Winoda should have never ever said that like the humans that you get off of Winoda get indestructible till end of
Yeah, that part I don't get at all. Like there's no downside to this card. Like,
why are you doing like, why can they get their Blade Historian and I can't kill it? Like,
and don't get me wrong, I kind of get it, right? If this is the type of card that needs to exist, if like Fires of Invention is going to exist, or
we got to speed up the format a little.
Like I get it, but it's just like, this is what happens when you just have formats that are supposed to have so many big cards, and you get stuff like this.
Yeah, just as printed, it looks like one of those cards Winoda does that like it was written a certain way at first, and then they decided to push it a little bit. Like, oh, it'll look at 5 or 6 cards instead of 4. Oh, it'll make the creatures indestructible when they hit play. Just to make sure that your setup pays off enough. And I think they just ended up pushing it like way too hard. Winoda is a great pick.
Well, what was your number 4?
All right, what else have I got on this list? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Extinction Event.
Oh, that's a good one. I do hate me some Extinction Event.
God, it exiles. Like,
yeah.
Oh, it's so horrible that it exiles.
I think for me, it was just like, giving something indestructible doesn't matter.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter if it's a big creature or a small creature. Like it eliminates piles of tokens if you're trying to go that route. Like it was just it's a damn good Magic card.
Yeah, the way it plays against tokens is actually a great point too. Like just hit even for all your tokens. And there's like so much more token play than you think there is at any given time in Standard.
Yeah.
It's just like, what this does against, things like even like Essica's Chariot, Mascot Exhibition and stuff like that, it'll just leave you with a completely blank board a lot of the time. And like, mono white, that's a deck that's really dependent on its 2 and 3 drops. So you would think that, that would play well against Extinction Event. But it turns out that it doesn't most of the time because like, okay, they have really good 3 drops. They have their Elite Spellbinder and their Skyclave Apparition, but they also have a Luminarch Aspirant. Well, I'll just hit Extinction Event for odd. That'll take out the Skyclave Apparition and the Elite Spellbinder. Don't have to worry about those. I get a creature back from the Skyclave Apparition that can block the Luminarch Aspirant and give me a couple of turns to find an answer for that. So, like, even if you're not taking out every creature on the table, there's a lot of play patterns in Standard that are really popular right now that, like, even if you're not killing all their guys, it still effectively wins the game. Like on turn 4,
The biggest thing for me playing against it is that, let's say I'm playing against a normal sweeper like Doomscar. Like I would play certain creatures out to be like, okay, well, let me hold this post sweeper and do the thing, right?
Yeah.
But with Extinction Event, you couldn't even do that because like, well, if I play this instead and they do Extinction Event for odd, I lose like 3 things instead of 1 thing or whatever. So like I kind of have to play my better creature out just to have something that's relevant, and like you just
or to
like these ugly decisions. Yeah,
you have to bait the Extinction Event somehow.
Yeah, just getting these weird spots.
There are very strange spots with it, and I think my big problem is probably that this isn't a 5-drop sweeper; it's a 4-drop sweeper. If it was going to be a 4-mana sweeper that's easy to cast, like it's a splashable sweeper, a 4-mana sweeper that's easy to cast probably shouldn't exile.
Yeah.
You know, like I just feel like there's a lot on this card, but at the same time, I don't think that it's like broken. It's obviously not bannable or anything. It's just a card that I've been annoyed by.
What's so crazy about our list so far is that Extinction Event is actually a reasonably balanced card
compared to the other stuff.
Yeah, and that's like the least offensive thing so far.
It really is
that we've mentioned, and it's still damn good.
What do you got next?
Oh, this one's one. Oh man, I think when this got previewed, I actually remember saying like, this is going to be a card that I just hate seeing. And
one of those.
Again, I put it in several decks, and I never like this one's so bad. I hated putting it in decks, but it was the right decision. And that's Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, my problem with Ugin.
Speaking of exile sweepers.
Yeah, exactly. But this is what I argued with, and I had like a little Twitter thread going on at one point where I tagged wizards and stuff. And my biggest complaint about Ugin, and this is from back when it was around the first time, was that there's never been good decision making around it. Like most of the planeswalkers, you have to decide, okay, when I do the minus, am I ever going to be able to get anything on the ultimate? Do I plus? Do this? But like, one, it exiles damn near everything.
Yep.
You know, it deals 3 damage, which is more than any planeswalker deals when you plus.
You just get a bolt. You get a
it also gets 2+2 loyalty when you do it for some unknown reason.
I have no idea why it's +2.
Like, and it's colorless. So you can play it in any type of control situation.
Yep. Any deck you want to.
And the problem I have is like any card that basically invalidates the previous 4 or 5 turns of the game by itself is just not a card I want to have around.
Yep, like, it feels so bad to play against.
Yeah, and like, even when I'm playing it, right? It's just like, okay, well, I survived long enough. I guess I'm gonna die. It's like, oh nope, Ugin, wipe everything out, and I guess we start winning 3 turns later.
Guess she probably shouldn't have won this game, but.
Yeah, that's sort of how
Magic's
feel,
easy
right?
when you top deck Ugin, you know?
It's just like, it's so anticlimactic. It's just like, there's nothing for me to like about it. Stuff is exiled, so you don't even get that aspect. If you have stuff that triggers when it dies or stuff that plays out of the graveyard, like, no,
don't even get that.
Yeah,
that's why it's so hopeless against Ugin, is that there were a bunch of cards in standard that like, oh, I could escape it out of the graveyard or something like that, but you can't because Ugin exiles, and that's ridiculous. Like really the last year or so, 2 years really have taught us that like, if we didn't know this already, that exile removal is just boss. Like it's incredible. Like look, ECD's on our list, Extinction Events on our list, Ugin's on our list.
Well, I would say this, like it doesn't necessarily matter as much when there's not graveyard mechanics and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. But when you have sets that are based around like escape, or whatever, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it feels real bad to have Ugin around.
Yeah, you're putting the cards in there for those late game situations, but those late game situations don't materialize because there's this whole pile of cards that are just removing the cards outright.
What else? Oh, okay. Yeah. My next one is probably when the smoke settles and the dust clears. Probably the card that it's not my number one, but if I had to be honest, this is probably the card that I'm actually most psyched about leaving standard. And it's a weird one. Selfless Savior.
That's not that weird, though. That's not that weird.
Along with Seasoned Hallowblade, which you don't see as often now. I feel like Clarion Spirit has kind of taken the place of a lot of Hallowblades, especially with Extinction Event being the premier sweeper and all that. But still, the dog, great in the Winoda decks.
Sure.
It's amazing when you do have your Aspirin out or your Clarion Spirit, these creatures that you really need to protect. Skyclave Apparition, you need to protect that thing, or else your opponent's going to get this massive tempo swing
for no mana cost.
For nothing. It costs nothing. That's why I'm doing dog instead of All Seed. All Seed has the ability to like get a creature through for alpha, giving a creature protection from a color and all that. But it costs mana. And so many of these like mono white and Boros lists need their mana every turn. And the fact that they can like play on curve, like they can play a 3-drop with 3 mana and still have this ability up, is just incredibly annoying.
You know what? I would have given you a free pass if you put Alseed and the dog together. I would have been totally fine with that, because when those are both on the board with a mana up, like no quality removal works.
And there's so many situations too. Like
you know,
Go
I
ahead.
don't know, give everything -3/-3 or whatever, right? But like
Yeah,
most of the removal you're going to play doesn't work in those scenarios.
it's like minus and exile removal do work. And we do have some exile removal in the format, but it's these early turns, you know, where you're counting on your Bone Crusher Giant or your Heartless Act to generate or to take away really tempo from your opponent in those early turns. And Selfless Saber just completely brick walls all that. You know, you see a Luminarch Aspirant and you want it off the board immediately. You know, and this just says no for no mana, and especially in the early turns where the amount of just tempo generated from a Luminarch Aspirant being on the table at all for 2 or 3 turns means that like for the rest of the game, your opponent's going to have bigger creatures than you. And there's nothing to do about
even
it.
In the later stages though, because you had to remove those before you could deal with the actual creature you want to get rid of. And even then, you're hoping they weren't playing Allurus.
That's what I was just about to say. Is that like one of the play patterns with Savior that we haven't even talked about is Allurus. You know, if they get Allurus on the table and have a Selfless Savior anywhere in their graveyard, in their hand, on the table, like the game's not over, but you ain't killing that Allurus, like ever. And it's going to be really difficult to dig your way out of that situation. It's amazing. I don't know that Allurus is on either one of our lists.
No, it did not make my list. It's a damn good card, but
maybe I had too much fun playing with Allurus. That's possible.
Maybe.
But let's move on to what is your? I think we're on our number 2 now. Yeah,
number 2. This is an easy one. This is one that's, I wouldn't say dominated, but definitely been a good probably 20% of the metagame for the last 6 months.
Oh, is it the thing I thought it was?
It's Emergent Ultimatum.
Yes, man. That's
like
yes. When you said Winoda, I thought you were going to say Ultimatum.
No, the funny thing for me with Emergent Ultimatum is I had actually built a deck just for fun, and I remember I made a YouTube video about it. And it was a 60 card version, and it wasn't the 80 card version. But
I still think the 60 card version is actually like better. I really do.
I got done with the video, and I was like, this might be a thing, y'all. Like, you know what I mean? I remember thinking like, I played it just for fun to see if I could even build the deck. And it wasn't optimized at the time, I don't think. Yeah. But it was more like knowing it wasn't optimized and I was still winning a lot of games. I was like, there might be something here.
There is something here, bud.
And then a couple months later, you know, everybody started building decks
everywhere. Yeah. Thing. It was really after Kaldheim came out, we got like Binding the Old Gods. Like the deck is just.
The problem is just getting so much value for free. You know, like not free, but like getting to play 14 mana worth of spells for 7.
Exactly.
You know? Like it's so big. It's so big. And we had so many things where like you get Elspeth or Cure Best the Sea God, you know, where you get a big 8/8 that you couldn't hardly kill. You know, you could take extra turns, you could get rid of your opponent's creature. For whatever reason, because of the way the rules work, we can play Tybalt. You know, like
that's amazing to me that we can do that.
You can get the monocolor side, but then you can play the multicolor side, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like it's
doesn't make any sense, but
yeah, I mean, just so many things that allowed you to do. And again, it was one of those cards that could just invalidate the previous couple turns worth of play, right? It was play a, I don't know, Wolf Willow Haven, play a Cultivate, draw a card, try to go off. Yep. You know, like that was
that's how so many games went. Just the signal that a Wolf Willow Haven sent on turn 2 in the last like 3 months is just so like spirit crushing. You know,
and not just that,
I guess we're gonna have to deal with Emergent this game
because we were at an 8-set standard that had so many good sweepers.
Yeah,
like your opponents could go get Extinction Event
if they needed to do that.
Yeah,
and Shadows. They gotta get the event or Shadows verdicts. Yeah,
yep,
that happened a lot. And then next turn they just play another Ultimatum and get a
and then they go get Epiphany or the Planeswalker or whatever. Yeah. Like Emergent Ultimatum. No love for that card. You might even find a video of me burning 1 or 2 on my YouTube channel. Like just
nice.
Just saying. We might have that here at the end of the season.
Now, a card. My next card. I guess this is my number 2 then. A card that like I kind of like the card, but I'm glad it's going away because of what it represents.
Okay.
Is Drown in the Lock.
Oh. Okay.
I thought about making this entry into the story, but I think that rogues could still work without into the story. It would be hard. It needs that refill, right?
Yeah.
It needs a refill, but I don't think rogues can work without Drown in the Lock.
Also, Into the Story was pretty much only in rogues, whereas Drown in the Lock found use elsewhere.
Yeah, in other decks every now and again. You'd see it in the blue-black control decks and stuff. But Drown, again, this is mostly because it represents rogues. But, you know, I've seen the blue-red mill decks and the blue-black mill decks are still a thing in 2022 standard. And I don't really mind playing against mill that much. I may play against rogues. That deck just works on so many different axes, whether it wants to attack, it wants to mill, it wants to play like a control deck, it wants to be a tempo deck in the early game, and it can usually pull off those whatever it needs to be doing at any given point in the game. It can pull that off. It can turn the corner, play its Lurrus, and just start playing to the board and squeezing you out that way. The deck has so many options, and it wouldn't have 90% of them if it weren't for Drown in the Loch.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a 2-mana spell that can both counter anything, usually after like turn 4.
Yeah.
And it can kill a creature, right? So it got to do the best thing you needed it to do at either stage of the game. Yeah.
But I think that we have reached our number 1, and I think our number 1 is the same card.
Seeing as how this wasn't on your list to this point, there's zero chance this is not your number 1.
If it's not this, I'll be like really surprised.
But Yorion Sky Nomad.
There it is. Yep.
It had to be.
There it is,
it had
baby.
To be.
Woo, the noodle, ding dong, the noodle's dead.
I mean, God bless you, Covert Go Blue. Because I know this is your pet card.
I know Dan loves this card like so much, but
my goodness, like every game against this deck, no matter emergent ultimatum decks aside, like every other Yorion deck was all super slow and grindy, and we're playing 15 to 20-minute games on Arena, and it's just like just nothing was good about it. Even those are the games, like even when I won, it was just such a long grindy thing. I was just like, okay, cool, now I need a break.
Right. You play a half-hour game against the Yorion deck, and it doesn't matter if it's Sultai Ultimatum or what. You just play against someone like a second ago. I said that it's kind of demoralizing to see a Wolf Willow Haven on turn 2, especially from an opponent that's on the play. It's even worse with Yorion because you start your game, and before you've even chosen your hand, you see that your opponent's playing Yorion as a companion, and you're just like,
And I would even argue that too many people tried to turn decks into 80 card decks that didn't need to be. Absolutely. Just because Yorion existed. Because I had several people who would be on my streams or my Discord and like submit a deck list, and I'm like, why is this 80 cards?
Same.
Like just so you can play Yorion and you get value off of like 2 or 3 different cards. Like why?
Yep. Well, it's like I do a deck doctor thing for Patreon, and I probably had over the last 2 years, I probably had at least half a dozen different people who I was like, you could probably just put Yorion in the 60. Like it doesn't have to be a companion, but you got plenty of ways to draw it. You've got ways to tutor it up, even if you wanted to do that. It's like your deck doesn't have to include 10 bad cards just because you want Yorion as your companion. Like you don't have to do that to yourself.
But we had so many quality ETB cards too, where you're talking about like Bertham Lettuce, hell, Elspeth Conquers Death. Like
Yorion plus Elspeth Conquers Death is just such a ridiculous combo. Like in and of
the
itself.
Omens, the Omens were also very good.
Omen of the Sea was playable because of this,
Yeah, it was just like so many things. Like such a good ability. So good. And it was a creature that flew on top of it, right? So you didn't just get like a good ability, you got this 4-power flyer as well.
And 5 toughness, which mattered like a great deal against a lot of stuff. Like
absolutely.
Here's why I know Yorion's my number 1.
Okay.
I love to blink stuff. It's one of my favorite things to do in Magic. I have been a proponent of blinking stuff for most of my Magic life, since they made that like a thing. Like I love momentary blink way back in the day. It's one of my favorite cards. I love flickering. Yorion made me hate flickering stuff. I hate it. I can't.
Gotcha.
I'm going to have like nightmares about it. Like I really want to try to like make Semester's End or Teleportation Circle work, in the next standard. But Yorion, here's the thing. One more point on Yorion. You just said people really like this sort of slow value-based Magic. I like that. I like the kind of standard it looks like we're getting into, to where like you build edge synergies to get like tiny percentages over your opponent and snowball that into value that then ends the game. I like that kind of Magic. Yorion, it just kind of does it all at one time. Like you just get all the value.
That's true. You get like 5-6 triggers all at once sometimes.
And you just win. Like it's just over. It's just a pile of value all at one time. And all you really had to do up until you played the Yorion was play Magic.
I think it's also like to be fair to the card, I think it was also this period of Magic where like every card was really good.
Yeah.
So it's like,
true.
oh, okay, well, they're leaving mana up to counter something. You don't do anything. It's like, okay, well, on your turn, I'm gonna go ahead and put one of these omens into play.
Yeah.
And I'm either gonna gain life and make tokens, or I'm gonna get to draw cards, right?
Yep.
And then after all that, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter what you did because I'm gonna go ahead and use that Yorion now. And now I'm gonna get the cards and the life and the tokens all over again.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, that's definitely the one I have no problem. Like of all the ones on here, like just because Yorion changes the landscape by being gone.
Massively. More so than probably all these other cards put together.
For sure.
You know, like the adventure creatures are close. The adventure creatures are really close, but in terms of like one card that, you know, completely changes standard by its absence, I think it probably is Yorion. I think it is. Yep, that's a good list. Good list. Just let us know down there how you feel about our list. Anything that we missed, because I'm sure there's like 100 cards people are sick of playing against.
Oh, I know what people are gonna. I guarantee you. And it didn't make my list because I know people are gonna say, "How is this not on somebody's list?" But Embercleave, guarantee you that's gonna be the #1 card that people are. But to me, Embercleave is not as egregious as these other cards that we listed.
Not really. No,
it's powerful and it's rough, and like yes, it can win out of nowhere sometimes, but don't think it's as egregious as the other cards that we listed.
Yeah, when it comes to mono red, I'm actually more glad like all the stuff that's rotating in that deck. It's not that that deck loses one card. Like Embercleave is probably the best stuff in that deck pretty easily, but it also loses Torbrand. It loses Phoenix of Ash. It loses Fervent Champion. It loses Robber of the Rich. Like these are cards that were
like, basically loses the whole deck because Bone Crusher Giant was in there.
Yeah, Bone Crusher.
Yeah.
I mean, it just loses a bunch of cards. So
they're just goblins now.
Yeah, that's all. That's all. And if goblins, here's the thing about Embercleave though, if goblins had an Embercleave, it would be like a million times better.
Yes.
You know, if they just had that one card, they would be a million times better. But in a way, from my testing with the deck right now, Battlecry Goblin is kind of the deck's Embercleave.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
So that's a crazy card. But yeah, let us know down there. And of course, check out all of our various things. Here's all the stuff that I do. You can go to my Twitter. You can check out the Patreon, support the channel. You can check out the Twitch if you want to see me play Magic. And here is Mr. Dragon's information.
Yeah, you can literally find me everywhere at PowrDragn, PowrDragn, and my podcast, Color of Magic, if you haven't checked that out. But yeah, I've been putting up YouTube videos every single day. I've got Twitch streams. I've got Facebook gaming streams. So I'm kind of everywhere right now.
Yep, he is. It's true. That's how I found him. He's just everywhere, man. But yeah, glad we could do this. And let's go ahead and move on because we got another video to do. The cards that we most expect to break out in 2022 standard. So let's just in case you didn't know, look for that video on the channel too. If you want more content, there it is. It's going to also be on the channel. But bye for now, and bye.